you are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke McKenna, but today's case is the Unsolved Adelaide Oval Abductions. Now, many witnesses who chose to mind their own business, a suspect that resembles a man in a huge case, and a sister that continues to fight for answers. This case truly does have it all. By the way, I post so much content like this. It's my passion to film and to tell these stories. So if it is something that you want to support me in, I would love to have you here on my channel. All you have to do is subscribe and watch these videos. If you already do, I love you so much. And if you haven't yet, I would really, really love if you did. I would so appreciate you. Now let's get back to the story. So it was 1973 in Australia, and in Adelaide that August, two girls would vanish. Now, Joanne Radcliffe was 11 years old at the time, and she had a brilliant mind with a very loving personality. She could also be very feisty as well, but she was more motherly than anything. She loved little kids, she loved animals, she just had that kind of like a big sister mentality, even though she was a younger sister, but she absolutely loved animals and children alike. And we also have Kirsty Gordon, who was 4 years old at the time, and a young innocent child that hadn't even lived life that much just yet. Now, Kirsty was a very shy little girl at this point. She did come a little bit more out of her shell because she had been, taking other classes and being more social, but she was still a little shy girl. However, Kirsty and Joanne would often meet and play together at football games, and that was because both of their families had season passes and would often sit next to each other, and these were held at the Adelaide Oval. So August 25th, Joanne was there with her parents Les and Catherine, as well as her 13-year-old brother David, and they also had brought a family friend, like her parents brought a friend named Frank that kind of tagged along with them. They all went to the game, they sat down, and they saw that Kirsty was there with her grandmother Rita, because she had been staying with her grandmother while her parents and her younger sister were away, kind of going to meet some of her father's friends to talk a little bit. Kirsty just decided she wanted to stay with her grandmother at this time. Joanne and Kirsty decided to play together like normal, although a little bit through the game, Kirsty, being a small child with a small bladder, decided she needed to go to the bathroom. Now, the Radcliffe, Joanne's parents, had a strict rule about going to the bathroom at these games. There were a ton of people there, and they knew that, so they made the rule that the girls would not go anywhere during halftime. So this would be, breaks during the games at halftime or the last quarter, and that was because these were the busiest times where people would be up and about and could make little children get lost. So they said that they could only go to the bathroom during the game, when the game was actually playing, where everybody was sitting down to watch. And so Joanne was really good at following the rules. She took Kirsty during this time. They made it back within the right amount of time and everything was okay. However, a little while later, Kirsty would need to go to the bathroom again, and Joanne would once again take her at the proper times. However, they would not return. Now, Joanne had been taught not to talk to strangers. She'd also been taught how to dial 911 on a payphone, and so Kirsty's grandmother really thought that Kirsty would be okay in her hands, and they headed together to the bathrooms that were about 300 meters away from where everyone sat. And this would also be the time when Frank, from the friend of the Radcliffes, would also head out from the seats and do his own thing as well. However, 20 minutes later, the three of them would not be back. Frank and Joanne and Kirsty. None of them would be back, and the parents were really getting worried that their daughter was not coming back to the seats when she normally didn't take that long. That's when Joanne's parents went to the stadium secretary and asked if they could make an announcement over the system saying that these two girls were missing, to have them come back. And they told them no, because it was the middle of the game, that no one would hear, and that they just weren't going to do it. And so they actually started searching around the area as well as calling the police. Joanne's parents continued to search the area for them, were finding nothing, and by this point, it was 30 minutes later, Frank actually returned to the seat with the grandmother, and the parents were still searching. this was like close to the end of the game, they went back to the secretary. They said, will you please make the announcement? And because it was close to the end of the game, they did. The police got there about the same time and realized that these girls were missing amongst 12,000 people. A parent's worst nightmare. Now, Joanne had brown hair that she often wore in pigtails with blue eyes, and that day she had been wearing a white blouse, a black tank top, black jeans, and white shoes and socks. Kirsty was standing at 3'4" with blonde shoulder-length hair and blue eyes with faint freckles. She also has a slight scar above the bridge of her nose and a birthmark at the base of the spine and below her hairline. She was wearing a white pleated skirt and pantyhose with a purple jumper and brown lace-up shoes. Now, when investigators started to search the area, they actually found a witness, and this was a 13-year-old Anthony Kilmartin, and he was trying to sell food to make some money at this game. He brought his own little, strap and carrier that he would wear, and he would try to make money with the food he brought. And he actually saw these two girls coming down the stairs as he was going up, and then another witness came forward to say that he had seen these two girls kind of get on their hands and knees and look beneath a car that was in the parking lot because there was a stray kitten that they were trying to coax out. And like I said, Joanne loved animals, so this is very plausible. And this witness then said a man approached them, and he was wearing a hat and a checkered sports jacket with brown trousers, standing at about 5'8", and he was kind of saying that he would help the girls get this kitten out. Then this 13-year-old Anthony, who had seen them walking down the stairs, he would say that he had later seen them playing with some other kids near the gate, and these gates were open at this time because it was free admission because the game was almost over, and they were kind of playing near these gates when a man walked up to Kirsty, the younger girl, and kind of tucked her under his arm. And nobody really noticed at this point, Anthony said, and Joanne was kind of following behind them, trying to hit the man, pulling at Kirsty, and Anthony thought that this was kind of weird. However, he thought maybe this was just their grandfather, and he really wasn't going to get involved. And this was a case for a lot of people. They believed that this man was related to these two girls, and Joanne was just throwing a fit, not wanting to go. Then this man allegedly began dragging Kirsty towards the gate, and Joanne was following behind, trying to get her away. And at this point, investigators put up roadblocks all around the area. They had disappeared in daylight. However, they searched through the night for these girls and weren't finding them anywhere. They questioned homeless in the area to see if they had seen anything. They searched rivers. At 5 a.m., they were allegedly spotted in a blue Holden sedan with Victoria plates, and this was on Port Road, and there were allegedly two girls in the car, an older one up front and a younger one in back. Now, 30 minutes later, these two girls would also be spotted on the same road, walking close to the Adelaide Oval, but neither of these could be confirmed. Now, Joanne's parents were saying that Joanne would have never left on her own, that this was an abduction, and they were pleading with the abductor to just drop them on a street corner somewhere and to please let them go. And this resulted in a ransom note being posted of a $25,000 ransom to get the girls back. However, this turned out to be a hoax, but by then investigators did kind of have a sketch from the witnesses of what they believed this man looked like that abducted them that day. However, even with that, this case would go unsolved until 7 years later when another witness would come forward. Her name was Sue Lawrie, and she was 14 years old at the time that these girls were abducted, and she had seen something. That night, she was on the river kind of near the Adelaide Oval, and she saw a man on the other side that was carrying a little girl, and another girl was following behind, kind of chasing them. Now, this man appeared to be like a grandfather. He was also wearing a hat down over his eyes, but she did get a really good look at his face. Now, this was actually on the opposite of the Adelaide Oval where the investigators were searching. So this was the Adelaide Oval. They were searching, say, on this side, and she said that she was on this side where they were not searching that day. And Sue didn't come forward because she didn't know that this was anything to do with an abduction. However, she couldn't get this man's face out of her head 7 years later. It haunted her, and she decided to go to the police. because she would see this face again. His name was Arthur Stanley Brown, and he was being arrested 25 years after these girls' abductions for the murder of a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, Susan and Judith McCain. He actually ended up not being convicted for Susan and Judith's murder, but as soon as Sue saw his face, she knew that this was the grandfather-looking man she had seen that day with these 2 girls, and he also resembled this sketch, and many in his own family believed he was a serial killer. However, he has since passed, and he died a legally innocent man. Another man with a quite similar name to our first suspect here was also theorized to be the abductor, and in 2007 his grandson came forward saying that he believed his grandfather, who was Stanley Arthur Hart, had taken these girls, had abducted them, was the abductor. His family knew that Stanley was a known pedophile, and he was also an avid football watcher, and he had gone to almost every game at the Adelaide Oval. However, that day in August he was said not to be at the game for whatever reason, but he did also resemble the sketch. Stanley's grandson even gave areas to where he believed that Stanley could have taken them, and they searched these areas very thoroughly for many years. They found 2 barrels at one point, but they did not find any evidence that connected him to Kirsty and Joanne's abduction or possible murder at all, and they have still continued to search for years hoping to find a connection. But many believe this case is connected to a huge case that happened 7 years prior, and that is the case of the Beaumont children. Now, you may have heard about their case because it's huge in true crime, but it happened on January 26th, 1966 on Glenelg Beach. I'm sure I butchered that, I'm so sorry, but this is in South Australia. And Jane, who was 9, Arna, who was 7, and Grant, who was 4, disappeared while playing at this beach. Now, they have never been found. However, witnesses came forward saying that they had seen a man with the children at the beach who had a very thin face, thought to be in his 30s, had a suntan with a thin to athletic build. And the suspect in this case strongly resembles the one in the Adelaide Oval abduction case. Like, it's crazy the amount of similarities. I mean, long thin face, sunken eyes, large forehead, dark eyebrows, large ears. I mean, it's uncanny. And like I said, the Beaumont children's case has never been solved either, and one suspect in their case is also one we talked about in the Adelaide Oval case, and that is Arthur Stanley Brown. But if you'd like me to cover the Beaumont children's case in a full video on its own, I would definitely love to do that. I don't know if it's been overdone here on YouTube, but I would still do it if you guys want to see it. Now, Joanne's sister Susie, who was born long after she disappeared, who never met her older sister, is still searching for answers. She's given her DNA and said that she believes that the police are sitting on a gold mine of DNA having to do with the Adelaide Oval abductions, and that they could really help in solving this case. Susie says that even though she never met her sister, she's always felt a very strong mental and emotional connection to her, and I even thought of the possibility that possibly it could be a reincarnation of Joanne. I mean, if you believe in that stuff, that is definitely something that could happen. And Susie has also started the Leave a Light On Foundation for missing children. Susie has also said that her parents were extremely strong individuals in all of this and have taught her to be that way as well. But if you have any information in this case, please contact the Crime Stoppers in Australia at 1-800-333-0000. But do you think this case is connected to the Beaumont children? I'd love to hear your theories on this one. I think that it's just baffling that this man could so easily get away with literally just walking out with these 2 girls, especially the older one who was making such a scene. And I think it shows us that even if we don't want to get involved, I think it's always just a good thing to make sure a child's okay, or to, even make sure a parent's okay if the child is being a little crazy. I think it's just okay to take care of each other and to not be too scared to say something. Because like I always say, don't ever forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay, bye.